preferred or chosen by the consumers, then the chances that your product will stay in that particular market will be longer. It means that the product life cycle for that product which you have been introducing in the market is having the longer life cycle. Similarly, if you have introduced some commodity in the market and then within a year you observe that again your commodity is no longer preferred by the consumers in that particular market. So at that time your commodity or your product is having the shorter life cycle. So having the cycle, the longer or the shorter actually depends on the nature of the product that you are bringing into the market. Okay. For instance, we can see that again. We can also give one practical example from the Coca-Cola. Okay, we have been, we have been drinking this cold drink since our childhood. Okay, since your childhood also. So my childhood was about 25 years ago, and even my parents used to, they say that okay. So we used to have Coca-Cola even in their childhoods also. Okay, so it means that 50, 60 years, 100 years ago also there was a Coca-Cola. And still today we can see the Coca-Cola brand or the Coca-Cola, the product in the market. So from this information, what you can observe is that okay, the life cycle of Coca-Cola in case of Nepal or some other countries is very long. So, but if we see of the commodity like okay, let's say the chocolates that you used to have in your childhood, let's say Lacto or White Rabbit or something else. Okay, so it was like when I was in my childhood, I used to get that White Rabbit easily when I go to the shop. Now it's like when I go to the shop and then try to purchase that White Rabbit, I will find it difficult to have that White Rabbit in the market. So more or less you can see that okay, that's the end of the White Rabbit in the market. Now the question arises, okay, so does that mean company has stopped to produce that commodity or that White Rabbit? It really doesn't mean so. So this could be like okay, company is still producing White Rabbit from its farm or from its farm. But here the market they have chosen for the selling of this White Rabbit, let's say Narayangarh market. In Narayangarh market, when they introduced their White Rabbit before, now we cannot have this or we cannot get this White Rabbit easily. So it could be like that's the date or that's the product life cycle of White Rabbit in the particular market. So they might have switched their commodity to some other markets. Now it's like you can get that White Rabbit in the eastern part of Nepal. I assume that okay. This is not the fact, but I am just assuming that you can have that White Rabbit in the eastern part. So once the company realized that okay, so the product life cycle of commodity X is no longer being preferred by market X, they can switch their market into the next location. So talking into the previous location, and let's say okay, White Rabbit no longer available here, we can say that okay, product life cycle of White Rabbit in case of Narayangarh market is completed. So but once this White Rabbit is introduced into the next market, that's like the introduction of the White Rabbit into the new market, and then the cycle is moving on with the new market. So that's what the concept of the product life cycle is. Okay, so sometimes some company has completely shut down because of the commodity no longer being produced because the consumers are not much interested in that product. So that can also happen. But in the other cases, company is still functioning, but they have changed their strategy to move on to the next location or to move on to the next market. This can also be related with your product life cycle. So whatever I have told here, the meaning is that once the product has been introduced into the market, it will enter into the product life cycle, and eventually at one day, it could be like after 2 years, or it could be like after 5 years or 10 years. You never know when will that life cycle completed, but that life cycle will be completed. It could be completed in the longer time, or it could be completed in the shorter time based on the quality or based on the product that you are bringing into the market. This is what the concept of product life cycle is. So now let me hear from you one example of the agricultural commodities which you used to see before, but now you are no longer able to see those commodity, or you are no longer able to consume that commodities. Let me hear the examples from your side.
ब्यान भएको पेस्टिसाइडहरू नि हुन्छ होला नि सर हैन
त्यो मैले अघि भनिसकेँ, मैले डिडिसी भनेको थिएँ नि मैले अघि,
ए हजुर
डाइक्लोरोडाइफिनाल ट्राइक्लोरोइथेन के भन्छ होइन, त्यो त्यो डिडिसी अघि मैले भनिसकेँ नि, पहिला पनि वी कुड इजिली फाइन्ड द डिडिसी इन द मार्केट, यो पनि एउटा प्रोडक्टको लाइफ साइकलमा चाहिँ इन्ट्रोड्युस गरिसकेपछि नाउ वी आर नो लङ्गर एबल टु ह्याभ द्याट डिडिसी. So that's the end of that particular product, DDC. What else? What else could be the example of this, product life cycle when we try to think of our agriculture sector? Any idea? Any idea? Yes, of course, Ruchita. You can consider. You should not relate, or you should not limit your understanding about this product life cycle only with agricultural sector. Okay, this can be applicable to all of the sectors. So if you think of the the value addition activities of some commodity, let's say we used to have the vegetable product, this one, but now we are no longer able to have that. So you can also say that. Okay. Ruchita, what was your idea behind that?
Sir.
We can find oranges in the winter season, but now we cannot find the oranges. So can we consider that the orange has
No, I don't think so. That that's the life cycle of the oranges. Okay, not somehow related to cycle. Any other example?
Sir.
I have, I think, one example.
Yeah.
From previous times, when my parents were children,
Yeah.
they used to have
Section A. Yeah, yeah. I think Sangeeta was saying something. Sangeeta? Hello? Hello?
Hello, sir.
Uh, there was some technical errors from my side. Okay, I think Sangeeta, you are there? Hold on, okay, hold on, just a few minutes. Okay.
सर हजुर म्युट हुनुहुन्छ सर हजुरको साउन्ड नै आएको छैन
Okay, now I think it is all right with both of the sections. Okay, so so कोही एक्जाम्पल दिइरहेको थियो कनेक्सन डिस्टर्ब भयो मेरोमा ओके कोही अहिले छ भने फेरि चाहिँ you can have that explanations in a minute. Okay, so now let me move on with the life cycle. So what is the life cycle of a product? Course of the life of a product from when the product is in the development. So once you have developed your product, that's the beginning of your life cycle. And when you introduce it to the market, it enters into the various stages of the life cycle. And at the end, when your product has been removed from the market, that's your life cycle is completed there. Okay, so this is like a date. We can consider it like date in case of product is like when your product is moved out of your market, that's your life cycle is completed. So when a product enters the market, it has a life cycle that carries it from being new and useful to eventually being retired out of circulation in the market. This is what your product life cycle is. So now you can also just relate it with your household, some commodities from your household. Think of the product available at your house, either a new one or either an old one. So you can see that same product is still available, or some of them are not available because company have discontinued its production. So you are already experiencing a different stages of a product life cycle. So the best example that I have here is like, the typewriter. Initial days we used to have typewriter. It was like a common commodity, okay, and floppy disk also. But now we are no longer able to have that, or we are no longer able to get those typewriter or floppy disks, even if we are willing to. When you go to the market, and then when you go to one electronic shop and then ask them the typewriter, the basic answer that you are going to get it, we don't have. So this has been already replaced by the next commodity. That's the commodity in this case is the laptop or some other desktop. Floppy disk has also been replaced by the USB stick, underutilized crop basmati variety of rice. Okay, that is also the best one. Okay, so now varieties. Okay, one example clicked in my mind. Okay, so when we are talking about the varieties, okay, so now we were able to have the different local varieties. When we are, let's imagine we are in 20 or 30 years back. So now coming after 30 years ahead, now some varieties of the rice or some varieties of the other commodities that they have been already disappeared. That is also the best example of your product life cycle. So that's why in order to preserve those varieties, there are the establishment of the community seed banks. Okay, so your grannies, they might come up with the idea that okay, पहिला चाहिँ मैले यस्तो लगाउँथे, okay, पहिलाको चामलले यस्तो हुन्थ्यो, अहिले त्यो चामलले पाउन छाडिसक्यो. That can also be kept in the example of this product life cycle. Okay, now think of the commodity. आफ्नै एउटा चाइल्डहुड सम्झिने अथवा प्यारेन्ट्सको चाइल्डहुड सम्झिने के चाहिँ एभाइलेबल थियो, अहिले के चाहिँ एभाइलेबल छैन. एभाइलेबल छैन इज लाइक your life cycle is completed, and still available छ त्यो कमोडिटी मैले भइरहेको तर अहिले पनि पाइरहेको छु. You are still in the phase of product life cycle, but your product life cycle is not yet accomplished. तिमीहरु चाहिँ त्यो प्रोडक्ट लाइफ साइकलको जुन 4 फेजेस हुन्छ त्यो फेज मध्ये चाहिँ कुनै एउटा फेजमा चाहिँ रन गरिरहेको भन्ने कुरा हामीले बुझ्न पर्ने हुन्छ. That's already like you are already more or less part of the product life cycle. Okay, so why do this product life cycle is completed? So product life cycle is completed because of the saturation from the consumers. One reason could be that. The next reasons could be like there is the heavy competition in the market, so your commodity is no longer able to compete with the other competitors, so that's why you have to remove your commodity from the market. That also could be the next reasons for the product life cycle. And the third one is decreasement in the demand. So once the saturation of the commodity is there, so now there is no any demand from the consumers. So once there are no demands for your commodities, then it's like only the consequences that you can have from that market is you have to take your commodity back, or the other could be like your farm or your business entity is closed. So that could also put your that could also contribute for the accomplishment of the product life cycle. So I already told you some of the products may stay for a long time in the market, and some has to quit early. So that really determines, or that the nature of the commodity that you are bringing into the market really determines, okay, how long your commodity is staying in the market and how long your it's long. Yes.
Saturation
Saturation is like saturation भनेको के अब पुग्यो भन्छ नि, like when you are saturated you say that okay, I don't want to consume anything. Okay, like अब भोक चाहिँ एउटा चाहिँ भोक लागेको बेलामा चाहिँ when you consume the food, then you are into saturation point. अब चाहिँ मलाई चाहिँदैन भन्ने हुन्छ. त्यसै गरेर चाहिँ कन्ज्युमरले चाहिँ त्यो कमोडिटी चाहिँ when they are using now, they are no longer interested in that commodity and they are saturated. Saturation को मिनिङ चाहिँ अब हामीलाई चाहिँदैन यस्तो कमोडिटी भन्ने स्टेजमा पुगिन्छ भनेको के. That's what your saturation is. Okay, so if consumer any commodity, then that's like we can say that okay, consumer is saturated with that commodity. So that is also the reason that could be that is contributing for the product lifestyle. So now, so there are 4 different stages in your product life cycle. So every commodity that you bring into the market, every commodity that you have, अब example राखौँ was iPhone को है, iPhones को example हेर्दाखेरि चाहिँ अहिलेको सिचुएसन हेर्दाखेरि चाहिँ iPhones चाहिँ हामी 11 Pro कता पुगिसकेको छ। अब यस्तो चाहिँ किन भइरहेको छ त तिम्रो जस्तो चाहिँ मार्केटमा चाहिँ कम्पिटिसन चाहिँ एक्जिस्ट भइराख्दाखेरि चाहिँ त्यो एप्पल कम्पनीले चाहिँ आफ्नो कमोडिटीको चाहिँ मोडिफिकेसन चाहिँ एकदम स्पिडली गरिरहेको छ। अब यदि भनिरहँदाखेरि चाहिँ when you move on to the market and then when you try to purchase Apple 1 or iPhone 1 or iPhone 2, it's difficult to find. त्यो पाउँदैन कम्पनीले त्यसलाई चाहिँ कम्प्लिटली स्टप गरिसकेको छ। Okay, so that's the end of your iPhone 1. That's the product life cycle of the iPhone 1 is completed. So iPhone 2,